The city was alive with noise, its streets glowing under neon lights and towering billboards. But one man walked through it untouched, unmoved, as though wrapped in an invisible wall. Adrian Cole was a millionaire many times over, the kind of man people looked at with admiration, envy, or suspicion. His name was stamped across skyscrapers, charities, and companies, yet those closest to him whispered that Adrian Cole had a heart of stone. His eyes never lingered on anyone too long, his lips rarely bent into a smile, and he carried himself with a distance that money often builds. To him, the world was a transaction, a business deal, a ledger to be balanced. Love, friendship, compassion, these were luxuries he believed only the weak entertained. But one rainy night, in a place far beneath his glass towers and luxury cars, a stranger's simple request would unravel that fortress of coldness and awaken something in him that even he did not know existed. Before we dive deeper, if you believe in the power of kindness, in the beauty of second chances, and in the possibility of hearts changing for the better, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone you love, and subscribe to our channel Kindness Tales. Every click helps spread stories that remind the world of the goodness still alive in it. Adrian's story begins not in his office or on a yacht, but on a quiet sidewalk just beyond the city center, where rain had begun to pour heavily, washing the dust off the streets and driving people under shelters. He had just left a dinner meeting with foreign investors, irritated that the night hadn't gone his way. As his driver pulled up, Adrian caught sight of someone huddled against a street lamp, their thin figures shaking in the downpour. Normally, he would have ignored it. The city was full of beggars, drifters, and wanderers, and he had convinced himself long ago that their lives were the consequences of their own poor decisions. But for reasons he couldn't quite place, his eyes lingered on this figure. Perhaps it was the way the rain pulled at their feet, or how they clutched a worn satchel to their chest as if it were the most precious thing in the world. When Adrian's car stopped at the curb, he almost slipped inside, eager to be rid of the cold. Yet, the stranger lifted their head at that exact moment. It was a young man, perhaps in his 20s, his face pale, and eyes hollow from hunger. And then, in a voice that was neither demanding nor pitiful, he made the simplest request Adrian had ever heard. "Sir, could you please help me buy some bread?" Not money. Not a long speech. Not excuses. Just bread. For a second, Adrian was stunned. The man's voice wasn't begging. It was weary, resigned, as though this request was his last act before giving up. Adrian's driver frowned, ready to shoo the stranger away, but something in Adrian's chest tightened unexpectedly. Bread? Something so small, so ordinary, so basic. This man wasn't asking for much, just the kind of thing Adrian never thought twice about, the kind of thing his kitchen stored by the dozen every day. Still, Adrian didn't respond immediately. Years of cynicism hardened his reflexes. He considered ignoring him, but those eyes, those tired, desperate eyes, pierced through the cracks of his armor. With a voice colder than he felt inside, Adrian told his driver to wait. He crossed the street, rain soaking his expensive coat, and gestured toward the bakery still glowing with warm light at the corner. The stranger followed slowly, limping a little, as though each step carried exhaustion. Inside the bakery, Adrian ordered 2 loaves of bread and handed them over without much thought. The young man's hands trembled as he received them, his lips parting in gratitude, but before he could speak, Adrian had already turned back toward his car. Yet the voice came again, soft, almost breaking. "Thank you. You don't know what this means." Those words followed Adrian into his car, into his penthouse, and into the restless night that lay ahead. He told himself it was nothing, a simple gesture, a few dollars gone, nothing more. But he couldn't shake the memory of the man clutching bread as though it were life itself. Over the following days, Adrian's carefully maintained world began to feel oddly hollow. His meetings were filled with numbers and profits, yet none of them stirred the satisfaction he once thought was enough. Late at night, he found himself staring out at the city, wondering where the young man had gone, if he had eaten, if he had shelter. It irritated him that he cared, but it also stirred something he had buried deep, a memory of his own. Adrian had not always been wealthy. As a child, his family had struggled. He remembered nights when his mother cried silently, trying to stretch a loaf of bread for 3 mouths. He remembered going to bed hungry, clutching his stomach against the ache. He had sworn as a boy that he would never feel that pain again, that money would shield him from ever being powerless. But in chasing that vow, he had built walls so high that he no longer saw the humanity in others who were struggling as he once had. Haunted by this realization, Adrian did something he had never done before. He asked his driver to take him back to that street. For 3 nights he searched, but the young man was nowhere to be found. Finally, on the 4th night, he spotted him near a shelter, handing pieces of bread to 2 little children who looked just as frail as he had. Adrian's chest tightened again. The man hadn't eaten the bread alone. He had shared it. Even in his hunger, he had chosen generosity. Adrian approached, and this time the young man smiled faintly, though his face was still tired. He explained that the children were his siblings, and that ever since their parents had died, he had been struggling to keep them alive. The bread Adrian had given was the first proper meal they had shared in days. Hearing this, Adrian felt something in him shatter. He realized then that what he had seen as a small, forgettable act had been, to this family, a lifeline. That night changed Adrian forever. He didn't announce it with grand gestures. He didn't seek cameras or headlines. Instead, he began quietly funding shelters, arranging food banks, and creating programs that helped families like the one he had stumbled upon. At first, it was just guilt driving him, but soon it became something more profound. Each time he saw a child eat without fear of hunger, each time he saw a family take a step toward survival, Adrian felt a warmth that his millions had never given him. Yet, he never forgot the stranger's simple request. It humbled him, reminded him that kindness was not always in grand gestures, but in meeting the simplest of human needs. Bread, shelter, compassion. Months later, Adrian sought out the young man again. This time, he didn't come as a millionaire in a suit, but as a human being willing to listen. He offered him a job, a chance to rebuild his life with dignity. Slowly, the young man accepted, and with steady support, he and his siblings began to rise from the shadows of poverty. For the first time in years, Adrian allowed himself to feel connected, to share not just his wealth, but his heart. And in that sharing, the walls around him finally crumbled. His cold heart, once hardened by ambition and loss, discovered warmth in the very thing he had dismissed for so long, human connection. As the story of Adrian Cole spread quietly through those he had helped, people began to notice the difference in him. He was no longer just a name on skyscrapers. He became a man who looked into people's eyes, who listened, who remembered what it meant to be vulnerable. The city still glittered with lights, but now, Adrian's world glowed with something brighter, compassion. If this story has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to Kindness Tales. It helps us continue to bring more stories that remind us of the humanity we all share. And before we end, here's a special request. Comment below with these words. Kindness changes everything, because it truly does. Adrian's story began with a simple request for bread, but it became the seed of transformation. It taught him, and all of us, that sometimes the smallest gestures can melt even the coldest hearts. And in a world that often feels divided and harsh, one act of kindness can still ripple outward, changing lives in ways we cannot even imagine. So remember, Kindness is never wasted. Sometimes, it's just a stranger's simple request that awakens the humanity in us all.